Now, I think many people my age has their driver's license. And if you guys don't have your driver's license, I would highly advise getting one. But today's story is honestly something insane and that you guys gotta hear because, well, let's just say the one time I didn't drive somewhere, I ended up taking a taxi and that taxi ended up being the best taxi of my life. But before the story starts, obviously make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Also, not to mention, I am live on Kick streaming and telling crazy stories just like this one. So watch me live on kick.com/Bubba. Other than that, let's get straight into this crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was actually, funny enough, out of high school. I had a car, I was driving, and to be honest, I always made YouTube videos. I always wanted to be a YouTuber back then, and that's all I really focused on. But I remember basically one thing I always enjoyed doing was going out and doing the Devil's Tango. But not only that, I would go out and basically hang out with friends, go to bars, go to clubs, anything to keep my mind active. Because being at home all day filming really does get in a person's head. But I remember one time I was swiping through Tinder and I met this girl. And this girl, she actually didn't live far from me, but at the same time, she lived like, I want to say a 20-minute drive from me, which to me doesn't really matter. But I remember one time she told me, oh, like, do you want to like go to a bar and then like, I don't know, like go back to my place? I ended up saying, why not? And basically, I remember I decided to basically get my things and start getting ready to go to see her. That night, I remember it was a Friday night and basically me and her, we went to a club that was kind of like in the middle between our places. I remember me and her, we ended up going there and obviously I didn't drive to the club because, well, if I was going to drink, why would I drive there? So I remember I ended up basically getting a taxi and I basically started heading over there. When I got there, nothing was odd about the taxi ride I took that time. But then I remember when I got to the club and I started seeing her, me and her, we did the whole thing from taking shots to drinking a lot of alcohol. By the way, drinking alcohol, don't do it underage, guys. It's not cool. But on top of that, I remember me and her, it got to the point where we were on the dance floor till 2 a.m. I remember afterwards, after like when it got to like, you know, the closing point of the club, I remember she ended up telling me, oh, like, Bubba, like, do you want to like go back to my place? Yeah, sure, I'm down, is what I told her. And she got all excited and I remember she instantly ordered an Uber. Now me, I never was familiar with the Uber app. I know it's popular out there and I know many people use it, but I never used Uber. But she basically had like the app on her phone and she ended up ordering an Uber for us. And that night, me and her, we ended up going inside this Uber and heading straight to her place. When we got to her place, honestly, you guys probably know this about me. It got straight to from watching TV to doing the Devil's Tango. And we did that for, you know, a while. But I want to say like only an hour went by for when we were doing the Devil's Tango. And I kind of wanted to get home because I wanted to get home and edit videos so I could upload the next day. So I remember as this girl was sleeping, I decided to go outside from her place and, you know, basically got all my clothes on and went outside to basically call a taxi. But when I was calling a taxi though, one thing I realized as the phone was ringing to get to a taxi service, I remember there was a taxi already driving by her place. I remember when I saw the taxi, I rose my hand up and I'm like, oh, like over here. And I got inside the taxi and when I went in the car, I realized that this taxi looked kind of abnormal. And by abnormal, I mean, it didn't seem like a normal taxi that I've ever seen, but I mean, a taxi's a taxi, right? So I remember I got in there and I saw there was a driver and the driver was this blonde woman with blue eyes that seemed a lot older than I was. I remember I instantly just told her the address and she's like, oh, okay, you're on for a ride. And basically me and her, we started driving to my place. Now, one thing that's really funny is that I live in a town where I basically know this place like the back of my hand. You know, when you live in like a city or a town that you grew up in, you usually know where everything is. But when it came to this lady, for some reason, and I mean it, for some reason, she was taking like loops around corners and she was basically almost going in circles part of the time. And every time she would do this, she would always try to strike a conversation. Like, for example, she asked me how old I was 3 different times. At that point, I remember I told her my age and I said I was 19. You know, I told her that, you know, my dream is to become a YouTuber and stuff. And one thing I started to realize was that there was a camera in the car. Now, I thought the security camera was normal. I'm gonna be honest. It's not the first time I saw a camera inside a vehicle, but for it to be a GoPro, well, now you're talking kind of sus. At this point, I decided to ask her a question and say, oh, like, so like, how long you been taxi driving for? She ended up looking behind and looked at me and said, oh, like, I don't know, like couple months, I guess. Oh, so you're new to it. That's cool. And I remember basically I started talking about, you know, how it would be hard to be a taxi driver. I don't know. I'm just trying to relate to the person, right? Make the drive less awkward since she's taken the longest way possible to go back to my place. I remember from there, basically, me and her, we were driving and I want to say like 20 minutes into our drive, actually a bit longer. I want to say 25 minutes. She ended up pulling over. She pulled over and she's like, oh, like, sorry, like, I forgot something in my trunk. Okay, is what I said. And then instantly, she went to her trunk real quick, got like some sort of, I don't know, some like card reader thing for like a machine, a debit machine, so I could pay for my, like, you know, taxi drive, because I was not gonna pay in cash because I didn't have cash on me at the time. And then from there, she came back to the front seat, she put the debit machine down, and then she told me, oh, like, if you want, you could pay for it now. Yeah, sure. So from there, I start paying the taxi driver. You know, I'm trying to pay her, you know, to basically, you know, drop me off. But the thing that was really odd is that for some reason, the machine wasn't working. And I know my card has money in it, right? Like, I know I have the money to pay for this taxi, but for some reason, over and over, I tried 5 different times. The machine didn't work. So then she asked me, oh, like, so like, do you have cash? I don't actually, sorry, is what I said. And then that's when she said, oh, well, like, how are you gonna pay me back then? And at that point, I didn't know what to do. I remember as she was driving, I kind of just sat there thinking, okay, how is this gonna go down? I was thinking maybe a friend of mine could maybe come over to my place and quickly pay for it. I have no idea. But then she decided to say the really weird thing, and this is where things all went crazy. And she said, oh, like, if you want, like, you can pay for it a different way. And she took off her blouse, meaning she took off her clothing in front of me in the front seat of the car, and she showed me her cherries. She had nice cherries, but honestly, at that point, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, oh, wait a second. And that's when I realized what kind of taxi this was. Honestly, I didn't know what else to do, and to be honest, I did have to pay the woman. So I remember I told her, okay, well, like, I mean, I'm down, but like, can you not record me? She looked at the camera and she looked at me and she's like, oh, wait, you knew I was recording? Yeah, is what I said. And she kind of just goes, oh, okay, fine. And then she ends up turning off the camera. She parks the taxi, or I guess a fake taxi at this point, in like a parking lot that was really deserted and remote. And me and her, she basically got to the back seat and we ended up doing the Devil's Tango. We were doing it for, I want to say, like less than half an hour. And to do the Devil's Tango twice in one night was actually kind of crazy. But I remember I basically ended up going in there and, you know, I did my duty. I paid the lady in some sort of way that she was happy with. And she ended up driving me home. And then that's when she said, I had a lot of fun tonight. Yeah, sure, thanks. And I basically closed the taxi door and went straight back into my place. I'll say this much, it was super awkward knowing that what just happened, and I was debating on calling the cops about it, but at the same time, it's not like I paid, you know? Like, she wasn't a prostitute. So, you know, I mean, I guess it is what it is. But anyways, guys, that is it for today's video. Make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, fall for more embarrassing but crazy stories. Peace out, guys.